Hi and welcome to the first episode of The Board, connecting you with the Agile world. My name is Nathan Donaldson and I'm an Agile coach at Boost, and this is
Kirstin Donaldson, and I'm also an Agile coach at Boost.
So I'm sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. Everything's been restarted and hopefully working okay now. Today we're going to be talking about three things. We're going to be talking about some of the things that we've seen as common problems with teams that we've worked with in the past. If you have any questions or would like to get involved, then you can use the chat on live stream or our Twitter account, which is Boost New Media, one word. We're also going to be having a quick look at how Agile is being used outside of software development, and then we've got a recommendation of the week. So Kirstin, tell me what are the common problems that you see in new Agile teams?
One of the problems that we've found is the problem of teams not finishing stories. So they'll start one story and reach a block, and then just go ahead and start the next story, and then possibly a third as well. So you'll end up with a number of stories open on the board. So what we try to do is encourage people to remove blocks before they move on to another story, so they don't end up in a situation where you have a number of stories open and nothing getting finished within the sprint. Because obviously there's a danger of completing the sprint without completing any stories at all.
And that seems to be quite a common occurrence with new teams, especially who aren't used to closing stories and working on such a tightly defined time box or time scale, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, if they're used to having sort of limitless time to develop it, or what seems like limitless time under a waterfall system, there may not be the sort of urgency to finish a piece of work and then move on, which is what Scrum's all about, finishing work and then moving on to the next.
For sure. And so have you seen any problems over the last couple of weeks that you'd particularly like to talk about?
Problem I had recently, not a problem as such, but something that we needed to look at, was that a new product owner I had, who we're coaching, had been contacting me directly on issues to do with the sprint. So contacting me on email, not CCing the team. So while that's fine to have good communication, what really needs to happen is that person is communicating directly with the team. So what I've been doing to encourage that is copying those messages into Basecamp, our online communication tool, and then copying in the team as well, and then encouraging the team to respond directly on those issues, rather than me stepping in and saying, this is what the team thinks.
Great. And so that sounds like a great opportunity to coach the product owner. How would you work with that product owner to improve that situation?
I've just been encouraging the product owner to put everything on Basecamp and always make sure that the team's included on those messages. I think just having the team respond as well, in most cases, is really helping, because that person now understands that they can go directly to a team member on an issue. Obviously, if they've worked in a different environment before, that it wasn't Scrum orientated, they're used to dealing with one person, this idea of a single point of contact who would then communicate for the team. I think now this person is beginning to understand that they can communicate directly with the team. This isn't a problem, and actually it's more efficient. And
so you're talking mainly around this sort of asynchronous communication with email or stuff like that. Is that the main way that the teams are communicating?
Actually, no. The main way that we're communicating within the team and with the product owner is through stand-ups and quick meetings after stand-ups to go through things that need to be discussed. We find face-to-face communication is preferred. It just sorts things out much quicker, and everything is much clearer. There's no sort of different interpretation as you can have with written word.
Right, cool. And so if you were meeting with someone who was becoming a Scrum Master for the first time, and perhaps they'd been through a certified Scrum Master course or something like that, and they were working with a new team, what would be your advice to them, or what suggestion would you give them?
I think the main advice is to remind that person that the Scrum Master is there as a servant leader to the team. So they're there to help the team. They're not there to direct the team in their work. They're not there to tell them what to do. They're there to help them, to remove blocks and impediments to their work, and generally make their lives easier so they can get on with the work and doing the work.
Cool. So I hope that was of interest to you guys watching out there. If you have any questions, or especially if you'd like to disagree with anything we're saying, then please do leave a comment, or on the live stream comment chat window, or on our Boost New Media Twitter page. So Agile outside of software development, this seems to be getting more and more traction, and certainly the companies that we're starting to talk to in China and Shanghai are looking at using it for marketing, for running their management, for manufacturing. What are you seeing as trends in this area?
Well, like you say, people looking at doing Scrum for marketing, I think that can work to an extent, but something we were discussing the other day was the difference between using that and Kanban to run those sorts of projects as opposed to traditional software projects.
Right.
I know you've been looking at Kanban as well recently for your processes, and have previously tried Scrum?
That's right. So we initially used Scrum to run the business development and management side of this business, and while it worked well, having the time box didn't work as well when we had external influences that we couldn't affect. So the prime example was a lot of our work comes through government tenders, and they have a fixed time that you have to respond in. So if that would come, midway through a sprint, we would either have to change the work for the sprint or cancel the sprint and reform a new one. And because it was happening on a regular occurrence, we thought that perhaps the process was getting in the way of being able to respond. So we shifted to Kanban so that we could then, when a tender came through, prioritise at the top of the backlog or the ready list, get everything in place, and that could flow in as the next piece of work. And that's been working much more effectively. I think there's still some work we need to do to optimise that flow, but certainly it has worked well to date.
What about the people you've been talking to in China? Have they been discussing Kanban as well as Scrum for these types of projects?
Yeah, they have. There's been, Kanban isn't as prevalent in Shanghai at least as Scrum, and people are really just starting to come to terms with it. But there is a growing knowledge and awareness of it, and people are starting to ask us for more information, and so that's been quite interesting. One of the things that we've found quite useful internally as a team is running Kanban for One, so for the developers, the designers. So kanbanfor1.com sell a great kit, a physical board, or you can buy their online iOS app, and we'll include a link to this in the comments in a second. Or after the show, so you can go and find it. But having those to be able to manage your own personal workflow and your work in progress has been really great. So I think you have seen some other examples in sort of people's personal lives as well.
I have seen some examples of Scrum being used in people's personal lives. A colleague here was recently moving house, and his partner had organised a Scrum board for the activities of moving house. While he said he wasn't sure about the crossover between work and home, he did find the work got done. So I think it's the main thing. The other one that's quite interesting is one I found when I was looking around at a few blogs from a guy called John Miller of the Agile School blogspot, who was talking about having made a quick Scrum board for the process of a child's bedtime. This is a 2-year-old child, so he's put all the activities of bedtime, so for example, read story, have bath, brush teeth, that sort of thing. And he's allowed the child to start the tasks herself, so she'll move those along. And he's found, and his wife has been agreeing that it's working very well, that empowering the child to choose her own tasks has just made the whole process of bedtime much smoother.
Nice. So the same things that work for teams work for everybody.
Exactly. It's that whole empowerment thing. People taking responsibility for tasks works from the 2-year-old to older people.
So we've got a comment from Mike on the chat, and he's saying that he moved countries and his wife and him had stand-ups every night. So it's a nice one, Mike. I'm sure that was good. And I've certainly talked to people who've used Kanban to move house as well. So and in fact, I think there's a couple who are very prominent sort of thought leaders on big visible workspaces, and they used a Scrum board to plan their pregnancy for having their first child. So we'll put these links in as we go. And John, our helper over there, has just put up the link to Kanban for One. And Mike said he's got a visible workspace as well. It's interesting, visible workspaces, they really, for me, are the key to making agile work. Being able to visualize the flow of work and being able to communicate to everybody where things are at is really key. Do you have any thoughts on computer-based visible workspaces, which aren't very visible sometimes, as opposed to physical boards?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things for me about clustering around a board, say in the morning at a stand-up, is not just the physicality of having the board there, but also the breaking away from your desk actually taking that physical break, walking away and standing and discussing what's happening for 5 minutes. And obviously the board is a great prompt for people. Having those tasks there, moving those tasks, it really structures the stand-up as well, because we know exactly what we're there for.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly found that people have better, more complete interactions when they're moving physical things than when they're interacting with a large, say, screen. And certainly having a visible workspace or an information radiator in your workspace is just that constant reminder, which is fantastic. So I'm going to move on to our recommendation of the week. So our recommendation this week is Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great by Esther and Diana Larsen. As you can see, this is a well-used book for us. The book provides a framework for improving your retrospectives and getting through to actionable results. We've seen it as really improve our retrospectives, as a great tool for providing some structure, some great diversity of ideas in there, so that you can focus on different stuff at different times, and it's provided a springboard for our coaches to go and find other things like going out to tastycupcakes.com or .org, check that out, and finding new things there. Have you used this, Kirstin?
I've used this quite a bit, particularly when I was starting out. I think some of the more useful things in here, actually most useful, is looking at how to get SMART goals. So goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and timely. Quite often when you're having these sort of discussions, people will come up with ideas that aren't really fully formed and aren't necessarily actionable. To remind people of that acronym SMART, and then write down exactly what the issue is, what we're going to do about it, who's going to deal with it and when. Sure. Provides a great focus, and it's much easier to follow up on as well. Definitely.
And I mean the change I saw in the retrospectives that we were running was that we went from following sort of a ritualized pattern of works well, doesn't work well, or keep doing, stop doing, change, which got very stale and didn't allow us to dig in and generate the insights. So once we started using this pattern as described in the book, it really was a big improvement. So we're going to be giving away a copy of this. Your option whether you would like a physical copy or a virtual copy. So to be in the draw to win, just leave your, let's see, if we put your email addresses in the chat, that's not going to be so great. So if you just send an email to info@boost.co.nz saying that you'd like to win the book, we'll do a draw and announce to you guys next week who's won the book. So what are your plans for the next week with your teams?
Coming up in the next week, we're finishing a sprint and reaching the end of a project. So in the week's work that's coming up, we're probably going to end up bringing in a couple of stories, because we're reaching the end of the stories that we have on the board at the moment. So I've been working with the product owner this morning before this, looking at prioritisation. Obviously prioritisation is crucial at this point, because they're coming to the end of their time and the end of their budget. So I've been helping her look at what's absolutely needed for launch and what isn't, and we've been writing those stories. So we've just done sizing of those, and we'll be encouraging the team to move on to the next stories once they finish these stories, and getting those up on the board and finishing up and getting it launched. So it's pretty exciting.
So do you like to do anything particular at the end of a project?
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice to celebrate it. I like to bring the product owner in. It's quite nice to celebrate it in the retrospective. So if I look at doing something like a retrospective that covers the whole project as opposed to just the last sprint, we'll get some cake in or something like that to make it more pleasant. Yeah. And then we'll try and do a particular retrospective that will cover the whole lot. So for example, a timeline retrospective or something like that, and look at the highs and lows of the project, so that we can take our learnings from that project into the next one.
Yeah, I've seen the appreciations retrospective work really well in that situation too. It's not so much glossing over things that went poorly, but just giving people a chance to acknowledge each other for the contribution they've made. It really helps to improve the team spirit. It's good. Excellent. So if anybody has any questions out there, now would be a great time to ask them. Just checking our chat here. Also, if you have any suggestions for things you'd like us to discuss, perhaps things that you think might be interesting or contentious or would promote a good discussion, please let us know. Thanks everybody who stuck with us, and thanks for your patience with our technical difficulties. You'll be pleased to know that Gavin's now been fired. So we'll be back either next week or in a fortnight, but we'll let you know. Please do follow us on live stream if you'd like to be notified when we're coming up, or on Twitter we'll be announcing our next show. Kirstin, is there anything that you'd like to finish with?
No, I think that's gone quite well despite the technical difficulties, so I'm pretty happy with what we discussed today and looking forward to doing the next one, really.
Okay, so thanks everybody, and bye.